Hello, Namaskar, and a very good evening to everyone watching NCERT's live interactive session. I am Simran Singh, and you have all connected with us through eVidya channel number 6, 9 and 12. और इसके अलावा आप सभी जानते हैं कि तमाम माध्यम हैं जिनके ज़रिए आप सभी हमारे साथ संपर्क साध सकते हैं। जैसा कि आप जानते हैं, हमारा यूट्यूब चैनल है NCERT ऑफिशियल, और हमारे यूट्यूब चैनल के कमेंट सेक्शन में आप अपने सवाल भी दर्ज करवा सकते हैं। तो दर्शकों, एक बार पुनः आप सभी का हम स्वागत करते हैं हमारे इस खास सत्र में, जिसका नाम है स्कूल लीडरशिप एंड डेवलपमेंट। यहाँ पर हम नेतृत्व की भी बात करते हैं और विकास की भी बात करते हैं, और आज हमारी चर्चा का विषय भी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। टुडे वी आर गोइंग टू डिस्कस अबाउट फ्रॉम थियोरी टू प्रैक्टिस implementation model of NCSL, that stands for National Center for School Leadership। यानी NCSL के क्या ऑब्जेक्टिव हैं, किस तरह का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन मॉडल फॉलो किया जाता है, कैसे स्कूल लीडरशिप को प्रमोट किया जाता है। आपको आज के सत्र में बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिलेगा, और जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि आप हमें कॉल भी कर सकते हैं। हमारा कॉन्टैक्ट नंबर आपकी स्क्रीन पर फ्लैश हो रहा है 8800440559। इसके ज़रिए आप हमें कॉल करके अपने प्रश्न हमारे साथ साझा ज़रूर करें। और दर्शकों, हमारी कुछ आधिकारिक ईमेल आईडीज़ भी हैं, तो उन्हीं में से एक ईमेल आईडी आपकी स्क्रीन पर मौजूद है dth.class12@ciet.nic.in। तो आज का विषय आप जानते हैं कि इतना महत्वपूर्ण है, क्योंकि आज हम NCSL के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन मॉडल के बारे में बातचीत करने वाले हैं। तो NCSL NIEPA से हमारे साथ हमारे मेहमान जुड़े हैं, उनसे आपका परिचय करवाते हैं। इन द कॉन्वर्सेशन वी हैव विद अस डॉक्टर चारू मलिक, असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर फ्रॉम NCSL NIEPA। नमस्कार मैम, बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका। And I am also honored to welcome Dr. Shadma Absar, serving as assistant professor from NCSL NIEPA। नमस्कार, आपका भी स्वागत है।
थैंक यू।
और साथ ही हम अपने सभी दर्शकों का स्वागत करते हैं। मुझे पूरी उम्मीद है कि आज का ये सत्र बहुत ही इंफॉर्मेटिव रहने वाला है आप सभी के लिए। इट विल टर्न आउट टू बी अ रिवॉर्डिंग प्रोग्राम, सो स्टे विद अस टिल 6:15 in this particular program, where we are going to discuss about from theory to practice implementation model of नेशनल सेंटर फॉर स्कूल लीडरशिप। और सबसे पहले डॉक्टर चारू मलिक, आपकी ओर रुख करना चाहेंगे। तो आज हम इम्प्लीमेंटेशन मॉडल की बात कर रहे हैं। सबसे पहले तो ये जो थियोरी टू प्रैक्टिस है, जो टाइटल है, इसका क्या मतलब है?
जी, so today I think what we thought of discussing with the school leaders and representatives of our school leadership academies is how did theory inform the practice of NCSL? That is really the central question here. हमने कौन सी ऐसी theoretical models थे जिनको पढ़ा और जिनको हमने समझा, and we dived deep into understanding various relevant theoretical models, and how did we really convert them into operational aspects and created an implementation model of NCSL. So really the story began in 2012 when National Center for School Leadership was established in NIEPA, and this was an idea which was coined in the 12th 5-year plan, which the duration of which was 2012 to 2017. So there the focus was on establishing a center that could focus on developing school leaders as a professional cadre in the government education sector in India. So with that thought, the process of understanding what the entire field of school leadership research is, that began. And what National Center for School Leadership believed in is the fact that we must have a very wide base, a very comprehensive, extensive research understanding on the latest models in school leadership that existed around the world at that time, and how we could contextualize them, how we could adapt those models into the Indian context. So that was really the focus in the beginning, in our initial years of establishment of NCSL. So we had gone through a lot of material, and the unique thing about NCSL is that even though it is a implementation, the focus is more on implementation, every implementation aspect is based on some theory, on some research. So we have a very strong research base to school leadership. So we can begin that, and I think Dr. Shadma can begin the introduction on how we really researched on different frameworks.
Yes, primarily leadership has moved a lot from trade theories to contemporary forms of theories. So one of the definition that we got from Leithwood and Reel in 2003 was, he defined that there are two functions of a leader in an organization. One is providing direction and the other is exercising influence. So in that context we started our theoretical base, and then moving ahead, what does it mean actually? What does providing directions and setting direction means? Leaders work with others to create a shared sense of purpose and direction. Leaders work through and with others. They also help to create conditions that enable others to be effective. So in that context we will be trying to relate with the practice that we do, the model that we have in NCSL. Leadership is also a function more than a role. It is not a role. Other than formal authority, leadership encompasses a set of functions that may be performed by different persons in different roles throughout a school. So how do we implement it, Dr. Charu? I think we must throw some light on that with this definition.
Right. So Leithwood et al. And the researchers who have been working together in this area have really focused on how leadership is defined in the practical aspects, when you are leading an organization, for example. So they have identified two major functions, that is providing direction and exercising influence. And as in NCSL, when we are looking at the leadership framework that we have developed, which is practitioner centric, the focus is on exercising influence. How does a leader exercise influence without authority?
Yes.
So that is something which is the key point in leadership. And the second, of course, is setting direction, which is like how the leader is able to take the entire organization together, all the stakeholders together, and develop a vision, and also sets the direction of each stakeholder. And the direction is set with the single vision in mind. So these two most important functions have found space in the implementation model of NCSL. And if you see the leadership curriculum that we have developed for school leaders, and the capacity building programs that we have for school leaders, they are hinging on these two important functions of leadership, that is setting the direction and exercising influence. And if you go deeper into the materials that we have developed in NCSL, there are many sessions that have been designed on how to develop vision, how to create networks, and how to really influence people so that the desired outcomes are achieved. And for the really, I think that is an important function that Leithwood et al. Talks about, that it is more than a role. Basically, when we talk about leaders and leadership, it's always a positional understanding.
Yes.
So it's really not a positional understanding. A single individual who does not have a position can also be a leader.
Yes.
That's the basic thing. So it's a function. It's a task that you are doing. That is important for leadership. So the way you behave, what are your actions, that define your leadership rather than the position that you hold. So these are certain ideas that we have taken from the research area and integrated that into the practice model. Yes. Next.
The core definition, the core definition of leadership that, like Dr. Charu had already said, the providing direction and exercising influence. With this, there were 2-3 points that were added more by Leithwood in 2004. He categorized them as developing people, developing organization, and designing the instructional program other than the setting direction. So it was also emphasized that leadership is second only. It is the second most important factor then after classroom teaching, which influences student learning. So there are direct influences and there are indirect influences. So school leadership is the second most important factor which influences student learning outcomes, we can say that.
Right, and in fact, when we see that the National Education Policy 2020 has really put forth competency-based education right at the front. And of course, the idea of student learning and learning outcomes have become really important in the Indian education sector. the important fact here to remember is that leadership does have an influence on student learning. Otherwise, the general perception is that it is the classroom teaching or the teaching learning processes that have an impact on the student learning and learning outcomes, which is true. But at the same time, the managerial context of the school or the organizational context of the school, the leadership also has an impact on student learning, either direct or indirect. So school leadership is an important variable when you're talking about how does it influence learning outcomes.
And NEP very categorically emphasizes the role of a school head in developing the culture of the school, in managing the school and enhancing the student competencies. So school leaders play a very important role when it comes to improving student learning outcomes. That is most important.
Correct. And if you look at NCSL and the materials that we have prepared in NCSL, for instance, the sessions we have on leading an academic staff meeting, there the principal is expected to have a direct conversation with the teachers around an academic agenda, and how and of course track the assessment patterns of students and track the learning outcomes of students. And therefore, researchers which have actually studied in depth how leadership really influences the work motivation of teachers become very important in this context. How does it improve the motivational level or the teacher commitment? And therefore, teacher commitment and high teacher motivation impact the learning outcomes. So would you like to throw some light on that research?
While developing vision and while leading a school, participative decision making has emerged a very important factor in research. And when the school heads involves teachers and takes them into in consultation with them, develops a vision and executes different tasks and practices and programs in the school, so they are they turn out to be more fruitful in comparison to the vision set by a single person. So we look at it in a different framework, which will come in our next slides. So let's move on to the next slides. So Robinson et al. Has also done major work in the area of school leadership. He categorically says the more involved school leaders are with the core of teaching learning processes, the more likely they are to have an impact on students. The second most important finding of this study was effective educational leadership requires in-depth knowledge of teaching learning. Leaders must also build trust relations. Leaders have regard for others and treat them with respect. They are seen as competent and with integrity. Fairness had emerged a very important dimension in the research of school leadership. If teachers perceive their school head to be fair in the practices and processes, that enhances their motivation and commitment towards the organization and towards the school rather. So that helps a lot. Leadership are not leaders and not leaders are required. We require leadership in individuals. Harness capabilities within and outside of the school. So the leader has to look into individuals and harness their capabilities to make students more, they can bring out more outcomes.
Right. So I think, and just to set more context, this study was done by the New Zealand Ministry of Education. It was commissioned by the Ministry of Education in New Zealand. And Robinson et al. Has led this entire meta-analytical review and research across a long period of time. It was also a long-term study. And I think these findings are really, they have global implications, and we found them to be of great value when we were adapting and contextualizing the leadership theory into the implementation model of NCSL. And Robinson et al., this study has been quoted by far a number of times in the National Center for School Leadership. And I think researchers across the world have also focused more on the teaching learning process, the academic processes in a school. And really, what is the role of a school leader in influencing the academic processes? So basically, the point is that you cannot have a single point for leadership. You need to develop different individuals into leaders. And then now we are talking about student leadership.
Yes.
So how does the school leader really impact and motivate the teachers in the school, and how do the teachers impact the learning levels and competency building in students? So it's really not really a cascade process, but yes, all these stakeholders are interconnected, and therefore we are looking at leadership capabilities of each individual in the school. And of late, a lot of focus has been on the soft skills,
Yes.
and the competencies of leaders,
Yes.
such as empathy,
Yes.
emotional
Problem
intelligence.
solving, yes.
If you could talk about that.
Yes, mentoring,
Yes.
problem solving, fairness in the attitude of the principal. He has
Right.
to be fair and provides them support actually in
Right.
the in their administrative matters, etc. So that really helps and motivates them. So which in turn reflects into their classroom teaching.
Right.
If they get support from the school head in their matters, they will definitely be free from all sorts of worries, I would say.
Right.
And then they would be more free and open in the
Right.
classrooms, and then they can transact in a better way.
Right. So I think these researchers have really informed the practice at NCSL,
Of course, yes.
at each level. Whether we are talking about team building or leading teams, we are talking about leading innovations, because again, the school leader's role is to really create a culture of innovations and a love for something which is unknown. And how do you really innovate, for problem solving, or how do you innovate anyway?
So from now, which was leadership was initially very person centric. It was considered to be residing in one person in a position, like we talked about, that it is not positional, it is not as leaders, it is, and so another concept has emerged, which is distributed leadership. So distributed leadership majorly focuses on developing multiple leaders in an organization, in a school, wherein you develop leadership, or you harness the leadership capabilities of other individuals in the school, and through some situations in the school, like giving them different sorts of opportunities and creating situations wherein they can develop their leadership capacities. So that really is a new model that we are talking about. And it also talks, many of the authors have talked about many rather than few, having one leader in the school and having multiple leaders in the school. So it really it is a more flatter structure of governance, if we say. Distributed leadership really critiques the transformational and charismatic theories of leadership. It has emerged from the critique of these theories, and they are majorly focusing on developing leadership potentials and capabilities, harnessing the capabilities of all individuals in whatever forms, whatever the potential of the other person is. The school leader must be able to harness that potential and must develop them as create flatter structure of governance. That is most important.
Right. So I think what you said is really relevant for NCSL, because distributed leadership, of course, is one of the more recent
Yes.
additions to school leadership research. And as you rightly said, this set of theory, or this set of research actually emerged from a critique of transformational and charismatic theories, who are very person-centric.
Yes.
So even in transformational leadership, which was also an important addition
At that point of time.
At that point of time, the individual was empowered. The
Yes.
one leader was empowered to bring about changes in the system. But as we all know, that a single individual really cannot bring about a change in the entire organization, can initiate that change, can sustain that change, but of course requires the help and support and the network of other stakeholders in that organization. So in that sense, distributed leadership is a concept which is also a very exciting concept.
Yes.
To implement. And we have been trying to do that in NCSL of late. And it also talks about distribution at every level in the organization.
Yes.
Where you are basically motivating and encouraging people, stimulating them to think differently about their work, and also at a particular level, that school leader who is
within and across levels.
Yes,
it
yes.
is supposed to
who
be.
is in a formal position, basically initiates this whole shared vision process or collaborative process of building a shared vision, defining goals for each individual. And here the individual is empowered to define the goals for himself or herself in alignment with the vision of the organization.
Yes.
So distributed leadership is by far a very exciting and interesting concept which we have tried to implement at the National Center for School Leadership, both in our implementation plan as well as what the processes that we follow within the center. So yes, if you could kind of further highlight what distributed leadership is.
Yes, the researcher like Spillen, who has worked extensively on distributed leadership, he says that distributed leadership consists of two elements, the leader plus and the practice aspect, like which we were saying that there can be multiple leaders in the system, and the practice aspect, which majorly focuses on the situation wherein they work together and develop their leadership capacities. Tasks are accomplished through their interaction of multiple leaders in the system, and it is more a social distribution of leadership, wherein leadership functions are stretched over a work of multiple leaders. And similarly, many authors like Barry, Bennett, Andrews and Lewis also talked about that distributed leadership spreads decision making throughout the school. As a result, each individual has a greater opportunity to contribute to the common good in a way that enhances teaching, learning and the organizational effectiveness of the schools. When you are part of that vision building process, you kind of align yourself to that vision and you decide your own goals and work in alignment with that vision of the school.
Right.
So, this we have actually practiced in the National Center for School Leadership.
Right. So, what you talked about, that it has basically encouraged a flatter structure of governance, which I think is very critical for also the success of the implementation of any program.
Yes.
In 2015, we had taken the first steps in establishing the school leadership academies, because if you looked at the data from UDICE, at that time there was UDICE. So when we had looked at the data, there were about 5 lakh, approximately 5 lakh school leaders in position in government schools and government aided schools in the country. And it became, at a point it became really difficult for the center at the national level to reach out to each of the school leaders, because the numbers were very large. And at that time we were really wondering what could be the different approaches and methods of reaching out to such a large clientele, and of course across the country, across the length and breadth of the country.
Yes.
So at that time what we forayed into was building capacities of institutions who are located in the state and the UTs. So I think the inception of the leadership academies was with the idea of distributed leadership, that since the National Center for School Leadership can not possibly reach just through face-to-face capacity building programs to each of the 5 lakh, approximately 5 lakh principals, then why do not we have centers and academies that are established in different states and UTs who become capable and who become empowered to take this program to the remotest of the schools. And I think that was really the beginning of how distributed leadership seeped into the implementation model of National Center for School Leadership. And I would like to explain this a little further in terms of how these 29 leadership academies got established over the last 7-8 years. And systematically we have planned with them the leadership program and how it is to be implemented within the state, within the UT, reaching out to each school, empowering them during the entire journey, and really developing them as equal partners, both intellectually as well as in the implementation sector. And this is really the model of distributed leadership that we are following.
Because we really give them, we really empower them. The onus lies on them. We really empower them, and they really work towards it actually without you know, much interference from us, you know.
Yes.
They are empowered within themselves
Right.
at this stage.
And I think the word that you used, ownership.
Yes.
Distributed leadership is a model which actually
Works
encourages
on, yes.
encourages ownership.
Yes.
So if you have centralized controls, if you have a positional leadership, then perhaps, you know, each individual will not be empowered, and more than being empowered, will not feel that this work is mine.
Yes, that's what it is different. That is why distributed leadership is different from delegated and other forms of leadership.
Right.
Wherein the work is only given and they do the work.
Right.
Here they have the authority and they have that freedom
Yes.
to feel empowered.
Yes.
That is more important.
Yes. And I think when we look at the processes of the center as well, when we are distributing tasks
Yes.
to each individual, to each of us, you know, now we have a larger team.
Yes.
So when we are distributing a task to each one of us, then they are really empowered to take decisions, and they are also participating in decision making.
Yes.
And therefore they feel that this leadership program is not something which is coming top down.
Yes.
But it is a program that we own. We have the right to
take it forward.
And to also positively contribute in this entire journey.
Yes.
So the idea of ownership, and this is true for all the organizations, you know, if you really want each individual to own the program,
Yes.
you need to distribute leadership.
Yes.
So distribution is not just distribution of tasks, but also empowering them to
Yes.
to take the task forward and be a part of the decision making, be a part of the outcomes as well.
Yes.
And that would be the true success of distributed leadership in any implementation model of any organization or any large public sector. You know, so this is something that we have really focused on.
Yes.
The idea of ownership.
And ma'am, with regard to this, we have few comments also, if you would like to comment on this and share your remarks. The first thing is that leadership has actually evolved over the years. The meaning of leadership has actually evolved for different people. And as you just shared that distributed leadership, the onus doesn't only lie on one person. That is the first thing. And second is when you try to bring theory to practice, especially for something so significant like empowering school leaders and enhancing school leadership, what are the different factors associated with it, and what are the different areas or things that you keep in mind?
Okay. So basically, you see, when you're talking about a school and how does a school leader distribute the tasks?
Yes.
So it's not just distribution of tasks. So for instance, you know, I have as a leader of an organization, I have 50 tasks to be completed. So what is my intention of distributing the task? Am I distributing the task to Dr.
Yes.
Shadma because I want to have less burden? Is that my intention? Is that the purpose of the leader? That I'm distributing the task to my stakeholders because I don't want to do that work? Is that the purpose? Or with that distribution you want that everybody's individual capacity gets
gets
improved,
developed,
gets developed and gets increased. I mean, it increases, and they also in the process learn how to you know, how to do a task. So that is very important, and that conversation is very important with every stakeholder in the organization. That conversation is really important, you know, because you know, the one who's distributing the task may think that it will make my burden less. But that's not really the purpose.
That understanding needs to prevail.
Yes. So that really is the purpose, because you want that the other individuals also engage with the task,
Participate
and engage with the process, and in the process they become the leaders. So that is important, you know. So and they also own, and which is why also it is normally said and quoted in leadership, and we also quote that often in NCSL, that the organization must not be really dependent on any single individual.
Yes.
So if an individual gets transferred, or if an individual leaves the organization because of any factor, then there must be people who are ready to take up
that
space and that organization, and it should really be run by all the people in the organization and not just 1, 2, 3.
Yes, yes.
That is important. And with distributed leadership, in fact, if you look at the modules that we had developed for CPD, we had brought in this idea of how distributed leadership is important for successive planning. So in any organization, you want the organization to thrive and flourish, as much as it can. So you want to prepare future leaders. If you really intend to prepare future leaders, you need to distribute leadership, because at a later stage they will be taking up the position of leadership, and it's beyond position also. In fact, if you see, there are many schools where in fact, one of our professors had visited a school in Chhattisgarh, and she found out that there was a rickshawala who was the member of the school management committee. And he was really very, very active. He was not educated, but very, very active as member of the school management committee. So basically, it is beyond position.
Yes.
Leadership is really beyond position, and one should really understand that idea and try to inculcate and encourage that idea very much.
Yes. And so, distributed leadership also points towards, like, you should not distribute or give tasks based on the expertise only every time.
Yes.
Initially that can be the reason, but not every time, so that other skills can also be developed in that person.
Right.
If somebody is good in ICT, so every time he should not be engaged with ICT. He should be good in administration as well. He should do financing as well.
Right.
So multiple set of skills can be developed within an individual.
Yes. So absolutely what you're saying is very true, because in most of the organizations and school especially, it is often seen that teachers who are good at database management are given that task repeatedly.
Yes, over the years.
Over the years, So what are you really doing, because you're making the organization stagnant?
Yes. So if that person leaves, so then that task nobody will be able to do that task.
Correct. So I think that whole idea of rotational, allocation of tasks and responsibilities, and building the competencies across different verticals. That is very essential if you really want distributed leadership to succeed in the school or in any organization. And we do that in practice in National Center for School Leadership. In fact, we have a new team now. So we are building their competencies across each vertical. So as you rightly said, that one should be really competent to really run the organization. At each level. At each level. And we can move ahead to leadership and context now.
Capacity to read the context correctly and adapt leadership to the needs largely determines success. So this was very rightly pointed out by Hallinger in 2011. There is no one best leadership style for fostering learning in schools, he said. Not just what works, but what works in different settings. So there's no single leadership style that can be, said that this is good for this, this school. There can be multiple, styles in different situations. Both qualitative and quantitative researches are required that describe successful leadership practices across different school levels, at different points in the school improvement journey, and across different cultures. That is very important. Leadership is very contextual actually, and very context specific. There can be no single formula, or there can be no single style to be said that this is the style for this year and that has to be followed.
Correct. And as they also say, that the leadership style also gets determined by the leader's behaviors and actions. So in the old days, when we used to think what leadership is, it was generally a very commonplace kind of a statement that was made, that is autocratic leadership style, democratic, or laissez-faire. So if you could explain those three styles.
Autocratic and laissez-faire and the democratic leadership styles were very different in their approach. Leader had all the autonomy in the autocratic approach, wherein it was more related to tasks, allocation of tasks, and having the authority with the leader. Wherein the democratic or the relationship oriented, wherein the tasks were distributed, but they were major focus was not on the tasks, more of relationship kind of
Yes,
they were more
more on relationship. Yeah,
focused more on relationship. And the laissez-faire type of leadership was like not bothering, indifferent towards the things, that was the leadership style. 3 leadership styles that were considered.
Right.
So moving on to the next is the leadership model on leadership for learning. Leadership for learning is basically understanding the context of the school, defining a vision for learning, leading learning teaching process, continuous professional development, academic supervision, and collaborating with stakeholders. This is the most contemporary approach wherein we include all the stakeholders beyond the school as well.
Correct.
So,
and I think leadership for learning has emerged as a comprehensive model for setting the vision for learning in any school. And this really draws in findings from many different models on leadership and on school leadership particularly. And in fact, if you look at really the entire historical trajectory of how leadership research has evolved over the years, the academic processes have been somewhere central or perhaps one of the important critical variables in the other leadership models. But when we talk about leadership for learning, in this model, learning is really right at the center.
Yes.
And I think that is where one can ask this question, and we often ask this question in our capacity building programs, which is fine that you want to become a leader, but why do you want to become a leader? What is the purpose of becoming a leader? What does it actually lead to? What are you really working towards? And then everybody really comes down to this answer, that ultimately the purpose of leadership is improving student learning, is improving student well-being, is improving the student learning outcomes, the student competencies. So whenever we have these conversations, the answers revolve around student learning and student well-being. So basically, when we have identified that, okay, so this is why I want to become a leader. So I want to do networking with the community, I want to do networking with other stakeholders, I want to innovate in my school, we want to define a vision, we want to run the school administration and school finance properly. But all of this, where is it leading to? So when that question emerges, the answer is learning. So leadership for learning has emerged as a comprehensive model which really talks about how every stakeholder in a school is a learner, and how each stakeholder is learning throughout the trajectory of their being associated with the school, be it the student or the teacher or a leader. In fact, this is again one of the myths that people face. When we ask this question normally in the capacity building programs, that who do you think is learning in the school? The answers are students are learning. But they forget that as a principal, you are also learning. As a teacher, the teacher is also learning. The community members are also learning, and there are so many researches globally as well, where the focus has been on understanding how does the school promote social change, social transformation, the community change, and how does the community in turn impact the school processes. So, so many researches have happened on this very linkage. So ultimately, whatever we are doing for learning. And this is something that this model has really explained.
And we have worked towards it in our implementation model as well, if we see. In the form of core groups that we have of the school leadership academies. A lot of stakeholders are involved from all levels of the system. Wherein we taken them as also part of, this school leadership academy, and they also contribute towards the working of school leadership academy in the state.
And also I would like to go back to the idea of context. Each state reality is different, and within a state there are multiple realities, multiple diversities. So when you have representation from all the districts, then it becomes a very impactful model of distributed leadership, and that is what we have tried also to do through the implementation plans that we share with them every year, every
And the
month.
materials that they develop.
Yes, and of course the materials that they develop has that diversity.
Yes.
The diversity reflects in the material, in the documentaries, in any research that they are doing, in any assessment of any program that they're doing, you know, which is hinged on leadership. And this is really also having a positive impact on the school and the school leader.
Yes.
And of course the ultimate beneficiary, which is the student.
Yes, and I think we will be definitely working towards them uploading on the portal so that it is available for our, you know, clientele, school leaders, so that they can, you know, really read through it. And because there is very less material that is available for Indian school leaders actually.
Right.
So this is the dream project that you have.
Yes, yes.
So I'm sure we would work towards it, all of us. And try to upload all that material for public, for the school leaders majorly, so that they can read and they can understand, you know.
And they can implement that in their school.
Implement that.
Yeah. And over the last 2 years, we have also tried to develop school principals as primary level researchers, you know. There was this concept, and there still is a very strong concept of action research in schools, you know, where the action researchers are short term, very corrective in nature, you know, when a teacher is observing the classroom processes, if these processes need any type of modification, the teacher can initiate a small action research project. So that is happening at the classroom level, but at the school principal level, or at the level of the leader of the organization, it is important to really understand you know, what are those processes and what are those you know, structural interventions that are required to make the system more beneficial to the student community, or you know, it can impact the functioning of the school. So there, how you can act as a researcher, how can you collect data from your school, how can you convert that into evidence and initiate processes which modify and which modify the improvement of the school.
Yes, and very rightly, these school leadership academies have really influenced, you know, school heads in how to document their best practices. The school leaders have really worked, you know, you know, we bring school heads from different different states across the country, and we see how beautifully they document their practices. So in the form of case studies, in the form of modules, and in the live streaming sessions as well. They bring beautiful videos wherein you see student competencies and you see the work that they do in their schools. So that has really influenced them to document their best practices as well.
Yes, and I think that again is an example of distributed leadership.
Yes, it has percolated to that level.
Yes, it has. So with this, we're going to wind this up by saying that you know, these are the models, these are the theoretical models that have really informed the practice at the National Center for School Leadership, and whatever we are doing with the states and UTs as well as the schools.
And of course, we believe that it takes a lot in order to convert these theories into practicals.
Yes, absolutely.
And
it has taken a lot of time.
Of course, the great work being done by NCSL NIEPA, that is right in front of us. Thank you so much, Charu ma'am, and thank you so much, Shadma ma'am, for connecting with us in this conversation. Well, the session has turned out to be very informative for all of us, because we can understand, try and learn a lot, and it is actually possible what you see on papers, what you see on theory, you can actually practice that in your life. And we have the live example from NCSL NIEPA. We had our guest. Thanks again to both of you.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the viewers for connecting with CIT NCRT for this particular program on school leadership and development. Let me apprise you once again that this particular program we run on Fridays right from 5:30 till 6:15 p.m. for all of you. If there are any particular topics, anything you would like to share with us that you want from our platform, the topics has to be spread to the wider audience in a simpler manner. You can always share your queries, the topics and your feedback with us. That matters a lot. Thank you once again. Well, this was the last live session by CIT NCRT, but again, you can watch the live recorded videos of our programs on NCRT Official, and stay connected. Keep watching eVidya channels. Take very good care of yourself. Namaskar.